This is the house in Elmira, New York, where Jane Roberts first made contact with Seth in December of 1963. From her second-floor apartment, Jane spent countless hours in trance speaking for Seth, as her husband Robert Butts patiently transcribed every word. The Seth phenomenon has resulted in numerous books, thousands of pages of unpublished material, and the development of a philosophy that has changed the lives of many of us. I'm Richard Kendall. I was a member of Jane's class for a number of years, an experience one doesn't forget. The tape you are about to see was recorded on June 4th, 1974. It begins with an interview of Jane and Rob conducted by Harold Channa and filmed by Stephen Bell. Following the interview are excerpts from Jane's class filmed later that evening, containing the only visual record we have of Seth speaking through Jane. I was at that class, and little did I imagine that over 12 years later, I'd be introducing this tape.
This evening we're coming to you from Elmira, New York, and we are really very, very honored and privileged to be able to be in the living room and the seminar room of one of the very most significant individuals on planet Earth that have had experiences with an altered state of consciousness, Miss Jane Roberts, who, along with her husband, Robert Butts, have been investigating over these past 10-odd years, if I'm correct. I'm not exactly sure, but approximately 10 years.
That.
Another state of consciousness than which we are normally accustomed to dealing with. I'd like to welcome you very, very much to the program, and I thank you very much for inviting me here to be able to talk to you. I wonder, perhaps, whoever, I'm not sure which one of you might like to pick up on it first, but there will be some people in the audience, believe it or not, although it's a pretty aware audience that watches this program, but there will be some people in the audience who aren't aware of the material, the Seth material. Could you maybe just give us a little bit of a background for a general audience of the means by which, in a general way, you came in contact with a new kind of consciousness and how it all got started?
Rob?
This all began late in 1963. One evening, Jane was writing poetry after supper, as is her usual custom, and she went into an altered state of consciousness. This was entirely unexpected by her, and she had an out-of-body experience. She found her consciousness leaving her body, and at the same time she began to write in sort of an automatic script. Now this experience lasted for over half an hour, and when Jane returned to her usual state of consciousness, she discovered that she produced this script called The Universe is Idea Construction.
This is in one evening?
In one evening, after supper. I was painting in my studio, and she was sitting out here, and I thought it was awfully quiet out here. And so I finally came out to see what she was so quiet about.
Yes.
And it was just at the end of this experience. She wasn't even able to use her voice to call me, to tell me what was going on.
Good heavens. Had anything like that happened to you before?
No, and actually it lasted a lot longer. It was well over an hour. Honey.
Wow.
No, I just, I've been a poet since I was a child, and I just was writing. And the next thing I knew, my consciousness was just gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in out of body in the respect that I had another body, or thought I did. My consciousness went through like the window and then into the leaves and into everything. And it wasn't until I came back that I found this script and realized that, I had to have written it.
Yeah. Oh, but when you came back and you were in, you weren't. There's two separate planes. You weren't aware of the other as you were.
I wasn't aware of my body at all, or the manuscript, or writing, or anything. I was completely.
What did you think?
Gone. When I was doing it, or after?
Oh, after. We'll get to what you were thinking after.
The first thing I did was call for Ron, and I saw the script, and I started reading it like mad. But the thing of it was that the stuff that was in the script was stuff I had felt while I was out, to some extent, in that the script, again, the title was The Physical Universe as Idea Construction, the idea being that everything is a result of idea and has consciousness. But when I was out, I would go in atoms and molecules, and I felt their consciousness. But then when I read the script, it was terribly hard to accept portions of it because it pretty much went against what I've been taught.
But I mean, just having experienced that, I mean, what was your reaction to it?
Wild. I mean, I had done no reading in this field. I had done nothing. So as far as I knew, this had never happened before to another
It wasn't
individual.
super poem. It was something more than super
It
poem.
was, you know, where did I go? How did I get out of my body? This is fantastic.
Then I would presume that on the trail of that, you probably began to. Let's see. Did you begin to investigate this field?
Yeah, then,
Edgar
right.
Casey, who had experiences similar, or did you begin to investigate the
Well,
field then?
I was a writer.
Okay.
And so I had just finished my first science fiction novel, which was a paperback, called The Rebellers, and I was looking for something else to write. And Robbie came up with the idea, joking. He said, "Why don't you do a book? This must have something to do with ESP or something.
Right.
So why don't you get some books, read up on it, try some experiments, and if they don't work, you can always say that, well, I tried all this stuff, and it just doesn't work. And if it works, well, you know, who knows?" So we started out, we got 2 or 3 paperbacks. We found out about Ouija boards and everything. And we borrowed a Ouija board. We didn't even buy one. And after, I forget, once or twice or something, we started to get stuff on the board. And with the psychological knowledge I had then, the first thing I thought of was, well, it's a subconscious. Rob was pushing it, or Rob would say I was pushing it. So we went through that long kind of thing. And after only maybe 5 or 6, 7 sessions with that, Seth came through vocally. I would start to know what was going to be said, and then I would start to want to speak.
Okay, I'm wondering if maybe we could, for the audience now, when you say Seth came through, maybe we could, you know, make that Seth then. Okay, maybe the audience
Right.
wouldn't know who was Seth. Perhaps some of them. Seth would be.
Well, on the board, the pointer would go over the alphabet and spell messages.
Okay.
And after a while, the messages said they came from a personality called Seth. And I didn't particularly believe in survival of personality to begin with. I also figured that if personality survived, they had a lot better things to do than come through on Ouija boards. I thought it was from the level of my subconscious or something. The material that we got, however, was excellent. And I was enough of a critical writer myself to know the material was good. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have continued. If it didn't make sense in a philosophical way, and and it showed no extravagance in terms of going overboard religiously. It was sound psychologically as far as we could tell.
And you were not cynical at all of these things, but you did have a healthy. It comes through in the book, is what I'm trying to say. Is it comes through that you really were. I don't know how to express it, but you were. You had a healthy respect for that. You had a very fine attitude toward this unusual experience. I don't know quite how to express it, but you were not naive, you know, but you were still open, but you were still guarded. It was just perfect, it seems to me.
I still think we were very lucky in that we had not read an awful lot of the current occult literature. Because if I had worked board and had read a lot and perhaps believed what a lot of people believe, that this had to be either a good spirit or a bad spirit, or that this was dangerous. I really don't know what I would have done. The idea of possession never crossed my mind because I never accepted it to start with. I mean, it just didn't exist for me.
Right, okay,
Well, Jane didn't even believe in reincarnation.
You did not believe in reincarnation prior to this.
But your attitude... afterwards.
And afterwards, but now?
Well, we've modified our attitudes a little bit.
Yeah. You know, I did a program a little while ago just to with some people from with the Edgar Casey people,
Right.
and they said that Edgar Casey, when he was having evidences presented to him from his good Christian conscious background, evidence presented to him of reincarnation, he had a tremendous inner turmoil, accepting that which seemed counter to that which he consciously had conceived within him, until he finally was able to work it out and accept it. But he had a tremendous inner conflict with that, you know, which would be more easily acceptable to certain Eastern consciousnesses, you know.
Yeah, they would take it in stride.
But he did seem to work that out in an amicable kind of way, and I presume you have.
Well, Jane's still in the process of doing
Well,
that.
she's helping a lot of people work that out, I think, because it's an important question.
Yeah, she doesn't, she's not against the idea particularly.
I guess maybe that's the point I was trying to make before, is that she was, you know, the idea, she wasn't against the idea of these things. You didn't even believe in it, but you still were willing to look at things anew. I mean, you were a poet, so you must have had you're willing to look at things anew. You weren't closed-minded.
Well,
that's a good point. Yeah, I'd like to say that...
But it was a healthy openness.
Right. When the whole thing began, it didn't take us long at all to realize that it was a creative endeavor. And that underlay everything else we did. And that's the main reason we decided to continue. I think that if, as Jane said earlier, it had been too much of anything, too sentimental or too religious or too even pragmatic, we'd have turned away from it. But as it was, it suited us, of course. And so we chose to...
and that if I may say, that comes through the book. The book is beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that we're mostly interested in telling people about.
But I wonder, maybe you could continue a little bit more chronologically. So there was this entity, Seth, made himself available. Maybe you could tell them a little bit about Seth's state or Seth's session.
Well, after the board session stopped, as they did very quickly, I just began speaking the words automatically for Seth without knowing what I was saying until I came out of trance. There was no training per se for this, no self-hypnosis, nothing. It just happened. Although I did give consent. That is, had I not wanted to do it, it wouldn't have happened. But I was so curious. I wanted to know what was happening. In the beginning, I paced the floor constantly in trance. I refused to sit down because I had read about Casey, and he lay down on a couch, and I thought, no, not for me. I'm not going to, you know, and I figured that if I didn't like what was going on, I could run, which was silly because I was the one that was doing it. And then it took, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years before I sat down, before I then would close my eyes. And then there was a period where I closed my eyes and never opened them. And then where all of a sudden I opened them, but I was in a deeper, of course, kind of trance than I had been before that transition. The one point on reincarnation I wanted to mention, though, too, and Seth.
A lot covered there. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, was that one of my first short stories was on reincarnation. And I thought as an idea or a concept, it was great. I loved to play around with it. But when this starts happening, when, say, magic becomes real, and all of a sudden you're told, well, you had this kind of a life, or you did this, or this is a fact, then I balked. Because it was one thing for me to play around with the concept and think, well, I go for it, or I don't, or what. And another to accept it as a definite fact of existence. And also, I don't like, and never have, and Seth doesn't either, the idea of karma, as it's been spoken about so much, or the idea of guilt, where people believe, for example, that they're suffering in this life because of a karma that they have in a past life. I don't believe in that kind of a connection. And also I believe that all time happens at once. So reincarnations have to exist at the same time as this life. And there has to be a constant give and take.
All at once now.
Right. I like the idea of, say, simultaneous lives. I'm sorry.
You know, not at all. That's very interesting. I just hope we're not getting too far. There's a tremendous amount of information contained in what you just said. It's very poetic.
It's also complicated.
No, but it's also very tremendous economy of language. It's beautiful that you contain a lot of information contained in there. You do not have a sense of the. You take some exception to karma as it's generally been interpreted through certain of the approaches to understanding that other consciousness, but there is a time continuum. While things are happening there is an all at onceness to events. There is a certain continuum, or there are past lives or past experiences that people can be aware of and in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
You have become aware of past experiences of your own. Am I right in that?
To a small degree, Harold.
Yeah.
It's not something that we've especially avoided. We have a little information on it, and the rest of the time we've just been too busy.
Yeah.
And we're also sort of saving that for a...
There was Seth's experiences in Denmark.
Yeah, a few things like that in the very beginning, you see, which intrigued us no end, because we'd never even heard of this sort of thing.
That's a tremendously
You see, which was,
thing.
that's what I meant earlier when I said it was creative, because to us, to even hear of this sort of thing was something new to us.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to make of it. But we wanted to continue, and then when Jane began to hear the words in her head, we didn't know what that meant either. But we decided to continue because everything else seemed to be working all right in our daily lives.
And then I wonder, this kind of experience, was there a very wide community of people that you could communicate with?
We told no one for a long time.
You did?
No.
We told no one, and
Was that
we watched.
your own doubts, or was it?
We didn't know what we
No,
were doing.
I know that you had some doubts and wondering.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
found that so
Yeah.
beautiful in the book. So you were really honest
you-
and open how you
you
felt. It
have
was
to.
surprising. Yeah. Which was very good.
I
Well,
mean,
even if we'd wanted to run out and tell somebody, we
Yeah.
didn't know who to tell.
All right. Yeah.
this stuff wasn't accepted
Right.
in those days to begin with, but until I actually started speaking for Seth, I had never heard of anyone speaking for anyone.
Right.
I had heard of, Ruth Kernan. But I had never heard of anyone speaking for anyone. So again, when that happened, for all I knew, I was the only one alive.
Yeah. No.
But I wasn't about to go and tell the neighbors
Yeah.
particularly either
Yeah.
at the time.
Well, what about now? Do you think there are very many people that? I don't
From
know very many.
my
Is it-
mail, people are very interested in this, and there are certainly spiritualistic groups where they have a so-called spirit guide. Now, I don't call Seth a spirit guide
Right.
either. I find myself in a peculiar position in that I don't particularly accept, I do want to watch my words,
Yes.
the dogma of any particular group, organization. This was my experience. I wasn't about to have it interpreted for me by others. I never thought of Seth as some white-cloaked spirit who was just floating around. Part of my life's work certainly is to try to understand the nature of our personalities, our personalities, what abilities we've got, what happens so that we can get this kind of information. And one of the things that I really hope is that people would begin to trust their own revelatory experience and not automatically cloak it in whatever dogma they believe in.
Right. That's beautiful. No, that's beautiful. Beautiful language. No, that's really fun. But I wonder if we could back up just a little bit again for some of that, and come back again to Seth. And Seth is you have a Seth session, and excuse me if I'm saying, but you go into another consciousness,
Right.
And a spirit. Is that the right word? How do we
Seth calls himself
personalize
what?
our
A
essence?
personality.
Energy, personality.
Energy, personality, Seth, who had an existence in the past.
Right.
Many existences in the past, which he is aware of and has aware of a new consciousness, and comes and speaks through you. And you are in a trance state. Now you see, that would be something,
Right.
I'm not even sure we've made that clear to people, but
Right.
that's what happened. And that's Seth, that's who we're talking about.
Right.
So we're talking another consciousness coming through you. You are a medium for
Right.
that.
Right.
You've come to know Seth pretty well.
Robbie has.
Right. You're not aware of it.
No, that is one of the, other people relate to him because they see the phenomena and they see Seth come through,
Yeah.
whatever terms you want to use, where I am not able to relate in that same way.
But you have your feelings, your interior experiences are unique,
Right.
and no one else can approach those. See, in the beginning, Jane was always asking me, what did he say, how did he say it?
Yes.
Was he nice to these people that were here?
Yeah.
And so forth and so on. And I would do my best to explain, but this is all from an observer's
Yes.
standpoint. It doesn't mean as much as her own subjective experience.
Right.
So through the books, we're really trying to disseminate that information.
And through yes, yeah, that's really.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. I'm wondering if I come back and pick up on another thing where you said that. All right, so we have this new kind of touch with a concept, which is giving information about a consciousness that's not normally in people's cognition. Extremely important information. Now, at that time, that contact with Seth became firm. About when, now, would you say? When would that have been? Would it have been 60?
I'd say early in 1964.
Right.
But it would have
It
been
happened
early,
and
just about.
It began late in
Just about
63.
just about a decade ago. Then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Just
we've
about
been
a
working
decade,
with it ever
Right.
since.
Yeah. All right. And then and you were not able. Then you had a certain, probably I would assume, a certain sense of personal, and I use the word very advisedly, unease, or at least wonderment, and not quite know, which has probably been becoming less and less characteristic of your attitude toward this phenomenon than it was originally. So you're becoming more confident with this then through the time. I would
Yeah,
presume, right?
I'd
Right.
say, I
Okay.
guess, that we felt as if, again, because we knew so little,
Yeah.
that we were explorers, and
Yeah,
we
right,
were going to
exactly. It would
be
be-
very careful
Right.
about exploring something we didn't understand, but
Yeah.
we were going to do it.
Right. Right. Very good. Beautiful. Yeah. And then I guess maybe the thing, if you don't, and that you were doing this, and then as you began to then extend out, there weren't very many other people that you were able to get in contact with, or that were able to give you a sense of positive appreciation or understanding that there
Right.
were similar or situations that they were familiar with that would
Yeah.
give credence in their own experience to that which you are.
Yeah. When after it
Do you
began,
understand? Yeah.
I went out and got a few books, and I wrote to a few people,
Yes.
some of them authors of these books.
Yes.
And the replies we got didn't satisfy us at all. And we quickly learned that we had a chance here in a creative way to
Yes.
make a contribution,
Right.
and at the same time learn on our own
Yes.
as we went along.
Yeah.
So all of these factors intrigued us no end. see,
Right. Yeah.
Because they were based on the strengths of our personalities,
Yeah.
especially Jane's ability with words and so
Uh-huh.
forth. We knew it was obvious that her writing ability was a valuable
Yes.
asset here. And my working with images as an artist,
Right.
that came in handy in all kinds of ways also.
Right. And then you have taken responsibility for transcribing or taking
Right.
the message that Seth is and handling that with.
Yeah. We tried
with,
several different
appropriate.
methods.
That's very important.
Right.
That
Yeah.
be done.
Extremely important.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I still take down Seth's material by hand
I see.
in our own sessions. In
Yes.
class, recorders are used, and Seth speaks in a different way. But we get a more concise and I think a more inclusive approach in our own material, which comes out in the books.
Then
And
you
it's
do.
different than it is in class.
Than you do in class.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, in class,
Well-
he relates to people.
I
Yeah, see, there might be,
I
say,
see.
25 or 30 people, all with their own approaches
I
and
see.
questions and things. It's bound to be different than just two people working by themselves.
Yeah, I guess. I hadn't.
In
quite-
our
I
regular
hadn't-
session, this is dictation, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Now, I wonder if that is a negative in feedback that's coming from other people, or a lack of.
No, we just take its differences in,
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know. I'm
Personality.
talking about.
Yeah,
a thing
no.
that, I
Yeah.
don't experience that as you do, but
And-
I'm wondering why that is that you have greater difficulty having Seth come through in a situation where there are other people around. I wonder. I don't know. I'm
No,
just
that
asking,
wasn't what Robbie meant.
No,
That's not what you
It comes
meant.
through differently.
yeah, I just meant it was
I
different.
see.
Yeah, I
I
meant
just meant it was
that,
different in class than it is when we're
Right.
here
When
alone.
you're just by yourself.
In
Right.
private
So-
session,
Do you think that, go ahead, sorry.
he is to the point, When he comes through, he says good evening or something, then he says dictation, and he just goes ahead and dictates a book. I would say to Robbie, are your fingers tired, do you want a break, or whatever. In class, he very rarely goes into that kind of a long monologue, which for us might last over an hour. Instead, he'll relate to people, or he'll come through because of a comment someone asks. And what Rob meant was it was different in his reaction.
Oh, it's a way of being, I see.
No,
The one is just to accumulate material for the books.
Which do you like the best?
Well, I'm a
You
little
two
bit
are-
prejudiced in favor of participating myself. But I've learned over the years that other people are really interested, and each person's interest is just as legitimate as the next. And so we've learned a lot from that. We didn't anticipate any such response from others at all.
Yeah. Do you think
In the beginning.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you think the quality of the responses, or the appreciation or understanding? You must have had some responses that people say that's, you go all the way from just incredulous ignorance, that would be a response, to one of understanding, and then one who could fully, or get close to fully understanding it as you do, the significance of it. Has the quality of the response, or the appreciation of the importance of it, been increasing, do you think, through
I
time?
think so, yeah.
In the last few
But
years?
we never had, experiences that were distasteful.
Oh, good. That's
Very
good.
But we were aware of that.
Yeah, there was a possibility.
When we first began to read up, we discovered that there was such a wide variety of practitioners in the field that it was almost a ready-made thing for
And
that sort of...
and I'm wondering, have there been experiences similar to this historically that people have had that have been
I would say...
negatively painted in the mythologies that we've been forced to live with, in the historical
say that's
condition of general
probably
ignorance
happened.
of that new consciousness.
I couldn't...
So that new consciousness or contact with it has in very many instances why it's extremely valuable. In this case, you don't use the word guide. I would tend to think
No,
that...
I just...
Well, you don't use it, but I would, myself would tend to think that
Each
what you're
person
doing
can-
is a sort of a guiding, it's important in that sense. So I
Oh,
use
well, that, yes,
guiding,
right.
but,
Right. We
you know,
hope it works out
but
that way.
well, it's very important, that new conscious, they've very often been seen as people who were, demonic or possessed. There are all these kinds of prejudices that were...
Right.
Yeah, well, we began to become aware of that with our reading.
Or even I'm wondering if I could say that you used the word previously where you said you became aware of occult literature. Occult has been associated, now I'm coming, let's say just I'm coming from academia, scientific community. The scientific community would deal with matters such as this, and they would say this is mysticism. This is not good, objective, hard Western reality. And the scientific community then would not be able to, or the intellectual, scientifically trained community that's trained in, to be very skeptical, would not have been able to until now. Some of the, so people. So I'm wondering now they're doing things like Carillion photography.
Right.
Where new perceptions that have been by certain people who were gifted are becoming objectively, scientifically validatable. So that mix between, so what I'm saying is that maybe that this is a particularly auspicious time for the coming together of a lot of different perceptions, but well, anyway, I'm not sure what I'm saying, except I would think that the reception for the readiness of the people, generally conscious to receive it, would be increasing. I mean, I should think that.
Well, you see, we think that that's no accident.
Okay.
And that's part of the whole mystique that Jane. These are taking some large leaps here.
Yeah.
I'll ask people to go along with it, but we think that we even chose to be born at this time so that in this particular way, this information could start to be given out.
Beautiful. This is important information. This is a curriculum for a world that's wondering about a new consciousness within a certain temporal framework.
That's it. And
There is there is a major new relationship to universal mind that the whole of the human family is coming to at this particular time.
Yeah.
This information is in touch with that and is extremely important.
We
And,
we hope so.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And I just wanted to take 1 second. I'd like to say to the viewing audience that I'd like to point out, if we could very quickly at this time, the book, The Seth Material, which is Jane's and Rob's book they put out. The Seth Material is the one, can you zoom in on it? Yeah? And let them see that it's published by Prentice Hall. And another is Seth. Seth Speaks. This is a good general description, I think, of the characteristics, what's happened. This is the first. Then Seth Speaks. Intriguing look at a new consciousness from Seth.
Yeah, that was written entirely in the translate.
Entirely in the translate. And then we have a new book that is now on the shelves, written by Jane. And this is The Education of Oversoul 7. This is out now. This is out in the bookstores now. These are also on the bookshelves, but this one is on the bookshelves now. It's good background information for you to follow up on all the video information that's going to be coming behind this. And then the one last, which is just about to come out, The Nature of Personal Reality, a Seth book, specific practical. And this has been by Seth.
Right. That's dictated by Seth.
So, and this is not out, this is coming out in...
probably late July.
Late July.
Yeah.
I think July is a very appropriate time. There's a major kind of conjunction happening in July. So I would like to just, if I could, thank you very much for this brief introduction. Extremely good information. And I would like to inform the viewing audience that Jane and Robin have very, very kindly invited us to be present at a meeting and class in which possibly Seth will come through, and we'll see if we can maybe in the background get some of that for the video audience.
That'll be a hectic affair.
And if that's okay for you and for Seth and for the world, I think the world's waiting and ready for Seth and or for Jane. And let me just say thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And
Well, it was after the Seth Material started and this whole thing before I'd realized that people, you might use them or think of them as symbols, or you might, no matter how you relate to them, they have their own fantastic individuality. And whenever any beliefs, even our own, blind you to that, you have lost. Whenever you relate to someone as simply a belief, or you get your back up and you don't see their reality, then we've won. Will bring you closer to people. It will not divide you. If it divides you, that is not what it is. I bid you good evening.
How's it going?
Good evening.
And understand your responses to our friend here. For when he speaks, you fear the vocabulary, because you fear the beliefs that you still are afraid operate. You are afraid that after all, for all of your hard-earned knowledge, the others are right. You are not sure of your position, and therefore you must defend it with a great vehemence. You sinned in our well-meaning and beautiful friend. Those are beliefs against which you yourselves have fought for so long. And you are afraid that in your heart of hearts you do not trust the joyful integrity of your own being. You are afraid that after all the old stories may be correct and there is something wrong in your creaturehood. That you are after all put down because you are human, and that you are after all damned because you are what you are, and that no matter what you say or do, you are originally in one way or another damned. You are afraid because our friend Andy is so sincere and so intent that after all, what he unconsciously feels and what sometimes comes through in his talk is right after all. You must ascend meaning that there is something wrong with where you are and what you are. Now, in those terms, what you want to be is within you now and within your glowing creaturehood. As he tried to say, there is no above or below. You are blessed because of your being, not damned because of it. As I have told you often, there is a spiritual biology within your being, and it speaks through each of your moments and through your sexual experiences. It speaks when you drink a glass of water, or when you wiggle your foot. That is also a highly biological nature to your spirituality. Your atoms and your molecules and your cells know themselves to be part of all that is. They do not question. That does not mean that there is anything wrong with questioning. It does mean that I say to you that you are blessed because you are. That your spirituality is known through the glories of your flesh, and that your flesh becomes more spiritual because of its existence through the seasons and its experience with the time that you know and recognize. You form your own reality. I say this to you each week. Yet through your own dream experiences and through the suggestions that I will give you, that I hope that you will follow, you will be able to discover this for yourselves. For I hope to be able to show you the different levels of consciousness in which you dwell. Again, as I have said before, you are indeed given the gift of the gods. You form your reality. What better gift could be given to you. How then could you imagine that you began this present excursion into this current life, already damned, flawed, or forsaken? If each of you would simply listen in the quiet of your own mind to the music of your own selves, you would know that the atoms within you speak with a joyful exultation. Those atoms and molecules, luckily, have not read many of the books that you have read, and they do not read your newspapers. They know that they are blessed because they know if some of you are more serious people will forgive me, and I close my eyes so as not to embarrass you. They know that existence is fun. They realize that fun is good and joyful, and that the gods play. They recognize that through expressing their own reality, they form these atoms and molecules and cells, the reality that you think of as a physical body. The atoms within your toe do not stop and say, I must be responsible and sober and form this toe, and I must think very carefully before I move, because after all, I am damned to begin with. You would have some toe.
Seth.
Now I return you to your class and to yourselves. Hold it. Paul. Oh, great. We're going to have a break shortly, but I want to know what your being is important. The fact that you are, my friend, impresses the universe, and that impression is never lost. That impression lives in your terms, though time itself is forgotten and dies. Your being as it is important. And whatever you do, it is not trivial. When you realize that your being is important, then you will realize that by being yourself, you will do in your terms important things you cannot do otherwise. Now we are here a small group, and you meet with yourselves and with me, many of you, weekly, in an intimate relationship. There are those who will listen to me speak. And I believe that you are there, audience, though I cannot see you. You are quite invisible to me. You can see the people in this room, and so you believe in their existence, but they cannot see you. And yet they believe in your existence. We then ask you to realize that though we cannot see you, we agree that you exist. I am sure that you do not need our agreement. Nevertheless, we all ask you to realize that when you look in the mirror, you see images of yourself. But you do not perceive the inner self that you know exists. And so each of us here asks each of you to realize that you have an inner identity that you cannot physically perceive, and an inner voice that you do not hear with your ears. Each of us here therefore asks you to admit the validity of your own being, to enjoy the being that you see and feel and touch, and yet to realize that you have still greater vitality and reality. We ask you in the most scandalous manner possible to realize one thing, that you are good, that you are blessed, and that there is nothing wrong with you. Now there are many levels of consciousness and awareness, and there are ways that things are said and unsaid. There are gestalts or families of consciousness. Each of you belong to such families. You are yourselves. Yet as you have physical families, you have families of consciousness. So most of the people in this room belong to a family called somatic. And so, and you give the message to yourself, for you are the message. The medium is not the message. You are the message. If only we can show you yourselves enough, then you will trust yourselves enough to explore those dimensions of your own greater reality that no one else can ever know or ever explore. There are journeys of consciousness that no one can take but you. And yet as you take them, you take steps
in other terms for others, and you leave marks for your brothers and sisters to follow in their own explanations. Cards that say I have been here, the place is safe, I leave you a sign of peace. Your being alone is important and has a validity beyond any philosophy. That is the message that you are trying to give to yourself. You are each trying to rediscover for yourselves in your terms now, after centuries of myths and distortions, the validity of your own beings. I ask you not to trust the validity of my being, which is none of your concern, but to trust the validity of your being, which is very much of your concern. Now, class members here know what I am doing. I ask you then to sense the energy in this voice and know that it is your own joyful vitality. I ask you to feel it and enjoy it as your own. And those who may view this class, I request that you also feel the energy of your being and know that this voice is but a dim echo of that vitality and validity that is your own. And therefore we leave this esoteric class and return you to the selves that you think that you know. You may find yourself with a random thought that does not seem to fit in with what you are doing or thinking at the time, and so you dismiss it. It seems random because it does not appear to fit in with your organized picture of reality, but it is an important mosaic that you throw away. So I also joyfully and playfully and creatively challenge each of you, even Jerky boy over here, to become more and more aware of your waking experience and of those stray thoughts that come in your terms like thieves in the night. They are not official, you do not accept them. The intellect says, oh no. Listen to those thoughts. Open your mind a mite further. In your ordinary waking life, in the middle of your ordinary pursuits, and see what miracles are there. And I say miracles. Miracles because they can help transform your own understanding and your own reality. And you have been blind to them because you fear you will lose your identity. Your identity instead, you see, can grow and include such experiences. Now I told you that class was quickening, so the time is ripe for each of you. So this week particularly, beside the suggestions that I gave, be gentle with your own experience. Do not be such a disciplinarian that when stray thoughts or intuitions come to you, you dismiss them. The fields of your own beings are filled with flowers that you do not recognize. You do not stop to look at them or smell their odors. They are not official flowers or official food. Sometimes you try to be too practical. You have lovely eyes. Those eyes do not try to be practical. They see out of the joy of their being. They do not hustle themselves. The right eye does not say, is what I am seeing right? And the left eye does not say, is what I am seeing wrong? They see together, and in being themselves, they see for you. For the atoms within your eyes do not see this image, though you do. You interpret the image, and you see what you see. The eye's vision, the reality of the atoms and molecules that exist within the eye, that vision is far different. And yet there is no disagreement. So there is no disagreement between your official reality and those unofficial realities that sometimes sneak through. Come out. Camera, light,
Yeah, it's all
action.
Right.
Hi, people.
I think it's extremely important. I want to thank you. Very, very impressive. Have you enjoyed it?
Yes, I really have.
You have. That's
I really have. I think class did too.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah, the
very
class did.
Class has been over now for quite some time, but the events that transpired during those years will never really have an ending. And as Seth might have said, in other terms, have yet to begin.